Hey, welcome to Chapter 13 on transplanting a 700 horsepower Transverse LS4 into a 1967 Chevy Corvair. If you like OCD fabrication, or maybe you're just baffled by people who do it, you've come to the right place. This chapter involves finishing the exhaust, plumbing the turbo, and mounting the intercooler. The reason these items are next on the build list is because they require a lot of real estate. Smaller things of lesser importance, if there is such a thing, can later be mounted in other places. I'll start with the hot side, which is joining each exhaust header into the bottom of the divided turbo housing. To make everything compact, the bins are tight, which would be a restriction for NA, but for turbo applications it's less of a problem. The Vibrant Performance primary header tubing is 2 inches in diameter, 063 wall, and made of 304 stainless. Since the engine is sitting level, it's easier to make calculations for angles using a digital level. When possible, it's nice to keep the tubing at primary angles like 0, 45, or 90, as I think they have a cleaner look. I've done my share of exhaust systems, and I used to make a device to cut the tubing exactly on the tangent. But every time I do an exhaust, it uses a different size tubing with a different radius. I gave up and just started using a zip tie and eyeball engineering to mark for cutting. It's close enough. A good way to start is to get the start and ending pieces created first. Next, fill in the middle section taking small bites. Usually, you'll end up with one last piece that's easy to negotiate. Two things to consider are, number 1, use as few pieces as possible, and 2, remember that the act of welding will shrink the entire piece, so make the dimensions a tad big. I get a lot of my supplies from Brandon Furchess over at ls4king.com. Since he basically pioneered the use of the 4T80 transmission to LS4, he's super helpful when it comes to the details on the conversion. Plus, he has a lot of knowledge about the unique LS4 and can get you whatever you need for your project. I don't mean to make this into a sales pitch. I mean, use whoever you want. But all I am saying is I think it helps to hook your wagon to someone who has already been to where you are trying to go. I did the same thing with my VW Subaru project. I found someone who really knew how to build EJ engines and tune them, which was Paul at Yimi Sport. Then I bought whatever supplies I needed from him, instead of buying everything from Summit Racing. Not that Summit is bad. Are you listening, Summit? Just that I like to patronize smaller businesses, especially when there is a knowledge benefit. Okay, well, back to what we're looking at here. You'll notice that the header pipes are being welded on the engine. You can and should weld the individual tube runs on the bench, but the final connection should be welded on the engine with everything in place. I know a lot of you already know this stuff, so I don't want to talk down to you. Actually, I'm just filling up talking space. Oh yeah, this thing is a transition from 4 inches to 3.5 inches, which is needed to downsize from the turbo to the muffler diameter. I knew it was wishful thinking that I could part this stainless piece on the lathe, but thought I would give it the old college try. As I thought, it probably could have been done, but would have taken an hour. So the parting tool was canceled and replaced with a skinny wheel. I feel like a hack and the lathe ways are cursing me for blasting them with grinding sparks. But hey, my machines are for fabrication, not machining spaceship parts. About the turntable. Yeah, what about it? Someday I'll make a video on how I made it. I got the idea from a guy on YouTube called The Viking, who, by the way, is a badass welder. I often ask myself, what would the Viking do? So I need an exhaust flex coupler. Unfortunately, it's ginormous, but I didn't see an option for a smaller one. The ends have to be welded before they can be welded, if that makes any sense, because they are all frayed and stuff. I used a pulse TIG for this. I'll tell you, I've had so much fun shooting this exhaust tip. How many absurd ways can I film the simple task of cutting down a muffler?
Dinner's ready.
Hey guys, I gotta take a break. I'll be back. Just had cod for dinner. It's from Costco, so it's probably Kirkland cod. The bandsaw is probably my most favorite tool in the shop. I've even cut up computers with it. Don't ask why.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Like I said, I hate the bandsaw. It's nothing but trouble. I'll use the skinny wheel instead. It's a good idea to use argon to purge oxygen from inside the stainless tube when welding. I use tape intended for powder coating to cap the ends. Not only is it super sticky, but it also resists heat. Slice it with a razor and feed the argon hose in. I use the same volume to purge as I use for welding, which is around 12 to 15 CFM. Okay, the tailpipe / muffler is in the car. All I have to do is tack the last elbow to the muffler, remove it from the car, and weld it. It won't come out in one piece. Too big.
It's too big.
I could cut the back of the car off to remove it, or maybe just make the tip removable. So here's a weird story. Back in college, I was going to band class. Yeah, seriously, band class, but that's not the weird part. The weird part was that on the way, I looked down at the bottom of my mailbox post and saw a black widow in an active death match with a mud dauber, which is a type of wasp. I was curious to find out who would be the victor, but had to go because I didn't want to be late for band class. When I finally got home, both bugs were lifeless in the web. One stung, the other bit. Kinda sad, really. 2 perfectly good bugs totally ruined. The placement of this is judged by this radius and how it works into this to start. Now, normally I would mount this and then have the tubes connect to it. But before I hard mount it, I want to make sure that I can make the necessary bends, the compound bends to go from here to here. And it looks like that will work. Whether this is tilted, I can change that. Will depend on how the tubes come out. So instead of hard mounting it, I just blocked it up in its position that I think it needs to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut that first 90 up there and see what I have to do on this edge up and down before I hard mount this part. The next little obstacle is the dipstick for the transmission. It's buried in there. And it has to come out. With it in this location, I can just get it out like this and put a funnel in there. I could always take off this elbow to get to the dipstick, and that'd probably make it easier. However, I'd rather not do that if I can do it, so that keeps me from lowering this thing down lower, which I'd prefer to have it lower, but I need to access that dipstick. And I really can't relocate the dipstick. To join all these together, I'm going to use a clamp that's similar to a Wiggins clamp instead of silicone hoses. And they're pretty cool. I've never used these things before, but they're mostly for high turbo applications. They don't blow out. Mine's not going to be a high turbo application. It'll be like 15 pounds, but if you had 40, 50, 100 pounds of boost, then these things work good. So just an O-ring that goes on like that. O-ring that goes on like this. Something like that. Right. Okay, where were we? So everything lacks a little grease. And then just like that, now the best part about this is this little clamp. Look at how cute that thing is. So it allows it to have misalignment. Can't go too far with it. Anyway, pretty cool. First time using them. Why not? Let's give it a try. Just kind of take a little chop at it. So maybe something like that. You can see that this is starting to line up. It's at 32.2. My audio on the original video made 0 sense, so I deleted it. Basically, we're cutting and joining the two bins together so that the final piece goes straight into the intercooler at the correct angle. The last trim is the easiest. Just make room for the clamp fitting and add a 1/4 inch for movement. With the tubing welded up and clamped together, the task is to find a neutral point in the movement, which will be the mounting position for the intercooler. These are the 1/8 inch tabs to mount the intercooler. I'm making the IC legs out of Plano 3/4 inch 11 gauge tubing, mostly because that's what I had laying around. With the 3 legs mounted to the IC, I'll find the neutral position and weld the legs as much as possible, with the IC in place, to the chassis. I like to do as much welding with the component in place as this helps with limiting weld-induced movement. Then the IC is removed for full welding. The IC legs may look a little spindly, but I don't mind if they have a little give. We've come full circle. I don't know which one took longer, doing the work or making the video, but it was all fun.